Hey guys, it is Citra here again with another episode where I upgrade Faith Fortress. Bad news is that I lost half the footage for this episode, so I've already gone and done a huge amount of work on the engine room, only to have lost all footage showing me making it. So I will run through what I've been working on. First off, down here, as you can see, is what is going to be a 12-state directional shifter with an FTP rune in it. At the moment, because I don't have enough sticky pistons, it can only do 8 of these destinations, and I'll give you a quick run through of how it works. Each row of repeaters is triggered by a phased torch. In the case of this one here, the torch is here, but it travels through a signal and into a redstone sensor, which immediately switches it off. The reason for this is mostly to do with the lower ones down here, and if I can remember where it is, I left the phase block for that. The reason is, of course, because we can't have extended pistons in dealing with these situations. So when I activate the lower pistons and any other set of pistons, they immediately flick off, and will leave the FTP rune behind. And like I said, if you have extended pistons and you try FTPing, you risk messing things up horribly, and I don't want that. So I also put that shortening mechanism on these as well, the self-cutting out. Now to activate it, the player is up here, and these are 6 damage sensors, although whilst they are all functioning damage sensors, this one hasn't anything to connect to, that activate the pistons appropriately below. This one is toggles the lower one. This one, is that moving it? It looks like it's moving it. Yeah, it is moving it. This one activates, there you go, and so on. And the result is that using these you can reach all 12 states, or at least you will be once the top layer is done, of the thing. Now, that's all well and good, and a lot of time was spent working on that. What I am now trying to work on is an indicator, using the same automation signals to control these pistons here and place these glowstone blocks so that they are positioned at the same 1, 2, 3 option of height that the rune will be at, because whilst it's quite easy to tell which XZ coordinate you're at, it's very difficult to tell which elevation you're at when there are 3 you can choose from. So with these in sync, you'll have a sort of unobtrusive indicator around the walls. I'm so annoyed I lost all that footage. There was a lot of good work there. I should go through another quick note, is that the way I chose to have the downwards signal done is, cut that out, through a row of phased torches. This was an idea shared with me by another runecrafter who asked me why I use lots of repeaters in my walls. Well, the answer to that is I prefer repeaters, but for upwards fields there really is no better way than just using a for upward signals, sorry, there is no better way. So the current objective is to build an indicator on the top floor that shows you what height the FTP rune is down below, and that's what those 2 glowstone blocks are for. The problem is, because this is going to be a fully contained system, you're not going to be able to tell which of the 3 heights it's going to be at. So when I activate the lower damage sensor, I want these 2 glowstone blocks to move in sync with the FTP rune. So when it goes up, they go up. When it goes down, they go down. And so it doesn't matter where the block, the rune is in height-wise, people will be able to see. So activate the lower damage sensor, and the rune goes up 1, and so do the glowstone blocks, and we have them being controlled the same way. I did have a slight problem though, that whilst the blocks and the rune move at the exact same time, they were a little bit out of sync. So the solution to that was quite simply just to manually activate and deactivate the pistons slowly, and then the rune will be in a state of being retracted on the lower level. Just so. So the result is now they are perfectly in sync. When I hit the damage sensor, then the glowstone blocks will be moved up, and so will the rune below. And once I do have a working upper system for moving the rune between the middle and the top layer, and the top layer and the middle layer, then the system will just be extendable so that the upper pistons get automated in the exact same way. So like I said, I had a couple of problems with fraps, both with recording and editing, and it was quite a headache. But on the plus side, now that I have all the basics done and I have it working, unfortunately you don't get to see it, but you do get to see it working. You get to avoid me just messing around for hours trying to get this to work, and I suppose that makes it considerably easier for you guys to watch. You can see the process is simply just place down a lock block, place a phase block torch on it with pistons in adjacent to it, and then link it to the automation. It does, on the downside, lose me the opportunity to sort of show you my experimentation and go through with what I was thinking, so I suppose I can just sort of reiterate that. I was trying for... I wanted the device to be underground and not really visible, but I also wanted a different, a more compact way of controlling it. I couldn't have redstone trailing all over the place because there were size constraints, so that led to, instead of using the redstone system that I had on the D8 before, the old one, in version 1 of Faith Fortress, instead going for these sort of 6 damage sensor grid almost, which does look particularly cool, I feel, and it works pretty neatly as well. So that's how that came about, just space constraints really. Which does leave the question, what was I saving the top half of the sphere for exactly? Well, given that the 12-state switcher is a very big and space-consuming invention, it would be highly impractical to have one of these in all 12 of Faith Fortress's islands, and I do want it to be at least partially movable. So, given that it's been announced that there is going to be some sort of engine rune that will allow Faith Islands to travel independent of Faith points, although with more limitations involved, I thought I would make a tier 1 Faith Island that nestled snugly in the top of the engine room, and once I have it, because obviously it doesn't exist yet, I can use that to position a Faith point that all of the Faith Islands, the other ones, not the engine room, target to, and then they can just warp into that. I was talking to Josiah about this idea, and he said that it was, to all intents and purposes, it was a tugboat for like those really big massive ships that you get that don't have the maneuverability to fit into smaller areas, so a tugboat does all the actual moving for it. It's slower than using the actual drive of the ship, but it does allow for much more fine control. In this particular case, I wouldn't have to fill up every sphere on Faith Fortress with one of these giant 12-state switchers. Instead, just stick one FTP rune and have it hidden underground and automated. Bring Faith Fortress in step by step. So I realised that the frame is actually preventing me from faithing this properly, so I had to dismantle that. Bit of an oversight, probably should have realised that it's good for FTPing things in, but not for faithing things, or I suppose using the drive when that becomes available. Quick tier 1, faith up into the sky, not a problem, we're jamming. Okay, what was next? Next, I had to make a faith point because, again, obviously the Pegasus rune doesn't exist yet, it's just something that we're expecting. So I used an FTP rune to bring this in, and to be fair, if the Pegasus rune doesn't actually happen, I'll feel a bit silly. But there's an opening in the roof, and that's going to fit perfectly with the top of the Faith Island, the tugboat one. But I lost the footage, I don't know how that happened, it's just really bad day with fraps. So, moving on, this is me making the damage sensor to activate the FTP runes again. I didn't have anything particular to work with, so I just used the glowstone on the floor for the moment. I'll probably use something a bit more sturdy at some point, but either way, you can see that it's activating FTP runes fine. Yeah. Oh, of course, it's because the debug text is the same. That's all good, doesn't matter what I swap to. You can see it's fine. I did have a problem here which confused me. You see how it's saying faith accepted? Now that's because the automation signature is activating the space above the faith rune, which is a tier 0 block air. So as well as attempting to activate the FTP rune, it's also attempting to activate a faith rune. This isn't a problem, the device will still operate fine, but it confused me hugely when I made this run, and if you're doing something similar, you might encounter this as well and be perplexed by it. So, nothing to worry about, the device works fine, it's just because the empty air is being automated into a faith rune, and there's nothing too difficult about that, because it can't ever function indoors. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I do apologize to you all for the poor quality of the video, and it generally just being substandard, but I couldn't exactly redo it once I'd started. So thank you guys for watching. I do hope you'll stick around to see the next better episode of this, and I hope to see you in the future. If you have questions, comments or suggestions, please leave them below. Like, subscribe, etc. I'll see you guys. Cheers.